In this video we're going to perform an experimental reconstruction of the ground plan for the Capel Garmon long barrow. This long barrow belongs to a style of architecture referred to as a Cotswold 7 type long barrow. As the term implies, these long barrows are generally found across regions of the Cotswold, Wiltshire and Wales. So let's have a quick tour of the long barrow and point out some of its main features. The long barrow has a lateral entrance, which means the entrance is from the side of the long barrow, and we have a very short, narrow passageway leading into the antechamber. We're now entering the antechamber, and this antechamber would have originally been covered by a roof made out of slabs of stone, just like this, making a corbelled effect, like a dome, right across the antechamber. Here we have the western chamber, and here we have the eastern chamber. Now this eastern chamber would have been covered by a very long, huge capstone, and we can see here how one of these side stones has been specially carved for the capstone to fit in and sit on top. I'm standing at the proximal end of the long barrow, the widest end of the long barrow, and we can see this feature here, which is one of the horns of the long barrow. We've now got the blind entrance across here, and then we've got the second horn sweeping around to this position. I'm now standing at the distal end, or the narrow end of the long barrow, and as you can see, it's all marked out by these small stones. So we're about to start our rope experiments. Before we do start, it's important to do a tape survey of the monument itself. So I'm going to lay out a length of tape measure along the longer axis of the long barrow. So I'm just getting to the end of the longer side of the long barrow, and as we can see from the measurements, this is equal to 96 feet. So the longer axis of the barrow was 96 feet. Now if we fold that 96 feet in half, we end up with a length of rope 48 feet long, which sets out the proximal end of the long barrow, as we can see here. So we take the 96 feet length of rope that sets out the longer side of the long barrow, we fold it once into half, which is a length of 48 feet, and we set out the proximal end, the widest end of the long barrow, and now we fold that same rope twice to set out the distal end, and that length should be equal to 24 feet, as we can see from here. Here's another interesting measurements at the Capel Garmon long barrow. I'm standing at the blind entrance to the barrow, and the measurement for the width of the blind entrance is 6 foot long. So I'm going to take the 24 feet length of rope which we used to set out the distal end. We then folded that length of rope 4 times to give us a length of rope of 6 feet long to set out the blind entrance. Well, I think we're looking at a common denominator of about 6 feet in length. So we're going to take this 24 length of rope and we're going to fold it 4 times this time and cut off 1/4. So we took the 24 feet length of rope and we folded it 4 times and cut off 1/4, leaving behind a length of rope 18 feet long, which just happens to match the length of the passageway leading towards the blind entrance. Now, we're going to take this length of rope and fold it in half, giving a length of 9 feet this time. And we're going to use this 9 feet length of rope to set out the horns to the burial chamber. So the length of rope I used to set out the horns for the long barrow, I'm now going to fold into half, which gives me a length of 4.5 feet, which is used to set out the radius for the eastern chamber of the long barrow.